We ordered the 1,500, we did not print
Okay.
1,500 copies. I gotta go.
So we put a lot of time into this, isn't it?
I saw the email.
Yeah. And then you just have to remember that this is the part I was going. You start it.
Start it and also stop it, okay. Are there any?
Yeah, we had a couple hundred people there. Perfect weather.
sweating.
A couple of years ago, it was like the circus of the sun. It was,
So you're at the other day?
Yeah.
Sorry, we missed that.
Monday was great. It was cool, breezy, good crowd, had a good number.
So just to let you know, on the Post Star property,
Yeah.
they did do a phase two, they did do water sampling, there's a document about. That,
Yeah,
and there was nothing. That's like over the top of her,
okay, that's
I
good.
mean, it's. You know, 100 and whatever year old
All these
industrial
are
site,
older,
a little
yeah.
less than a little of that, but there's nothing that's like. Would be like, oh my god,
That's good.
yeah.
This jet seat.
Is it the table?
You sign seats.
No, this one's open here.
They're going quick.
That one's open there as well.
Yeah,
I'll
Alice is
grab
here,
that.
but I think that guy's open.
I think I'll need to grab another
There's
chips here. Yeah, I can bring a roll to chair.
Like, that's good. Summer going well. What's that? Your summer going well? So far, so good, yeah. Moving plates. Beautiful day today. Okay, yeah, really good, right?
Literally.
Alright.
I just saw it.
Why you all smiling?
Huh? No. All right, wait, the next card.
But share a
It's
live
definitely
stream meeting. Oh, this is after it's at least.
I mean, I think it's just lagging a little bit.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm actually not gonna watch that because I still don't know. I'm dehydrated.
Yeah.
She's. So I. She's. It's possible. It's
Very good. We can back off. I forwarded that today. Allison, how are you? Check, my life is good and you're back. I don't know, he's sick, he has it right now.
All right, well, I'll.
And I'm not very excited about that.
So.
I mean, this is great. Back on. Oh, I find it is.
No, I know it is, I know it is.
I wrote that, you got a survey, stats and everything, so that was the last.
Yes.
That we got before we.
Certainly.
It's so loud. Yeah. So we all kind of have a lot of attention.
Yeah. It's a real nuisance stuff like that, some of us. But, I don't know.
I don't like that. I don't know.
I mean, once you read into it, it's. Those concerns that it's all like home operations. It's like, come on.
I mean, and I.
And someone came up. It was.
And John brought.
The only thing I can think of is Sylvie. That's been fun.
Yeah.
That's true. It's the thing, isn't it? When John Dixon reached out to us some, whatever months ago, I thought this was gonna be kind of like Westport cocktail party. Now it's going into tent on the front lawn, or party with the truck on the grass. It's a full day. Well, there's a Q and A that Mark is moderating. With John Davidson and Jay Collins. Should be great. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true, yeah. I don't know how many. Yesterday.
Thursday.
Oh, well, it's not. I think there's.
They're not gonna get it. So, say too much, and they brought it. We did.
They're great.
I guess if we go.
It's not like they're doing great. It's true, yeah.
Yeah, Liberty. Yeah, yeah, Greg is.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that's where they might be getting the project. Which. That would be, to me, that would be like one of the places to get it, because there's not a lot of. Locally.
West of.
I don't think they would do it one night, they should plan it out. These guys here.
You did that?
Yeah.
You really?
Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Socket grass.
Beyond that, part of the back.
It was like an app.
Through, our website, she was,
Yes, they did. Thank you. So, well, she say something. They
How are you? Summer?
Yeah.
All my graphic is word. It will be.
He just came into my office and said, we have a meeting tonight, right? Okay, so he's here. He's here, okay. Do we want to wait a couple minutes?
Show.
See another agenda here.
Each one here. So how'd that get by the poll? It's technically correct, it's entirely misleading. Well, I mean, they like the school of them, our trust. School of heaven. That's exactly. Here.
Okay. We're just gonna give it another minute or two in case any other committee members come. Just note, we are also streaming this on the city's YouTube channel. And so that's going to be up there and available, and we'll make sure we're tracking any of the comments that come in there. Yes?
Just practice to speak up.
Yep. So if everyone heard that, just make sure we're speaking up so that members of the public can hear the conversation. Of course.
You don't make it sit.
Yeah, like a cool way. Yeah.
You think, Allison?
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep going, okay. Okay, so I think we're gonna get started. There are some agendas that are circulating. Apologies, there's not a copy for everyone. But just to run through what we'll be talking about tonight, we're gonna start with a debrief of the public workshop that we held last month. Talk a bit about the strategic sites, which we started to talk about at the past meeting. We've done a lot of work in terms of outreach to the property owners that we want to fill everyone in on. Then want to talk about some of the supporting recommendations as we've talked about as part of these past meetings, as part of the workshop. In addition to any sort of site-specific recommendations, we want to make sure that we're thinking more holistically about other improvements that can be made and ways that the issues that we've heard through this process can be addressed, whether that's physical improvements in the public quality of life items that we want to also look at as well. And then we'll wrap up with some of the next steps that we'll be working. And we'll wrap up with a public comment period as well. Okay, so just to start with the public workshop, we did circulate to the group a summary of the workshop that we held at Rock Hill. That is up on the project website, so if any members of the public haven't seen that, you can go to the project website to review that summary. We were really happy with the turnout at the meeting. We had a lot of people there that were really engaged, really appreciated the other speakers that were able to present as well. I think it gave a great opportunity to think about this not just as this planning process, but really as a more holistic effort to advance revitalization in the East End. We did have boards up about the vision and goals that were previously developed with the committee at past meetings. There wasn't anything that substantially changed those vision and goals, so I think we're not proposing any modifications to that based on the feedback. Anything else, Megan, you want to add on the workshop?
No, just that we had really, really good turnout from all sorts of different community members, which was great, including some high school students who gave their own ideas on different ways that we could revitalize parts of the East End, which was really cool to see young people come out. And one of them was a lifelong East End resident, and she just really, really cares about where she lives. So it was cool to see the energy.
Just from committee members, any feedback or additional items you want to add from that workshop, things that we can incorporate into next phases of engagement?
Are we doing more? We're more scheduled.
We don't have any currently scheduled. One of the last items that we want to talk about tonight is the next engagement, which we're thinking would be combined with another planned event that would be happening in the East End to kind of build on these efforts for revitalization, but there's not currently another presentation night that's planned.
Well, anecdotally, there were several people who wished there was more room.
Mm,
So
mhm.
whatever we do, I'd love for us to try to find space for even more people.
It's a happy plan.
Mhm. Anything else from the committee in terms of feedback or items for that?
Depending on schedule, the Hyde would be happy to host in the auditorium. That's 144 seats.
Right. Okay. So wanted to then shift to, unless there's anything else on that, strategic sites. Do we need another chair over there? Okay, we can just, I can take that. Thank you. Sorry. No problem. So strategic sites. Just to kind of bring back to some of the early conversations on this topic, strategic sites is really a key component of the BOA planning process, looking at not just every potential brownfield, abandoned, underutilized, vacant sites, but really those sites that if they were to see revitalization could have spillover broader benefits for the neighborhood. We talked about with this committee kind of how we would identify those sites, and the real focus that we heard from you all was looking at those key corridors, whether it's Maple Street, whether it's looking at locations along the bikeway, Warren Street as well, Dix Ave. So we looked at the sites based on that and had discussed at our last meeting an initial list of strategic sites for outreach. And we've now done all of that outreach. We've been able to connect with all but one of the property owners. So we're really happy with the success of that outreach. And then also I would say that almost everyone was 100% on board with whatever kind of idea that the community felt was best to see in terms of changes to that site. And so it's a real blank slate to start from. We can just start kind of walking through each of the sites. The first one, and this one's a little bit unique, is the Burger King Pocket Park. That's at the corner of Warren Street and Glen. That's actually a site that's split between two parcels, a part that's owned by Peter Hoffman and part that is owned by Burger King. But the plaza essentially is being used by Burger King and maintained by Burger King. They've been actively going before the city planning board to make some improvements to their building. And as part of that, knowing how key this site was in the center of the downtown, we're open to folding into their site plan approval process some items related to improvements to the plaza. And so we are able to, as part of this process, develop some initial concepts for improvements there. I don't know, Allison, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, so what we've landed on right now in their site plan approval process as part of their overall site or building renovation is they're going to lift up that drop down space that creates kind of a perception of danger or, you know, a not great thing from a safety perspective. Trim back those bushes, some of which are on the city property, so we'll manage that too. And add some more lighting, so just make a more welcoming space that's street level and kind of makes it more available as a public space rather than now it feels broken off and dark and not as accessible. So we thought that was a great kind of start, more of a blank canvas than it is now.
The next site that we looked
So
at, yeah,
I just
sorry.
have a question. I was at that meeting. I'm trying to understand. Are they then subject to, if people come and want to mitigate those things, like how does that work if somebody comes and says, I don't like what they're proposing?
Well, what they've proposed and approved by the planning board is pretty basic and it's just to reduce. Right now, what's the creation of sort of an unsafe area or a perception of unsafe area. So
So there's no more open issues on their site.
at present, they are open to, working with us to, if more ideas come about. They are open to working with us in the future. But we're just more getting rid of what's the bad parts that are there and making it more of a welcoming space.
Other questions on the Burger King Plaza? So the next steps on this site for us would be, I know there's been a lot of past plans that have looked at this site before and come up with ideas here. Looking at all those past ideas, seeing kind of, based on and engaging with the public as part of the next phase too, to kind of refine what that idea would be for improvements to the plaza. The next site, just kind of heading down Warren Street that we visited, is the Armory building, and it's owned by a property owner that owns that and also the Native Textiles building. So just starting with the Armory, we had a great visit looking at the interior of the building as well. And we were actually able to kind of see the main gym space and the other components, the basement, get up onto a beautiful roof to see views of Bunce Falls. It was really cool. That property was actually initially 2 parcels, and you can kind of see that in the black outline here. So that the idea with when that was initially combined was to create an area for parking. The property owner has since purchased the neighboring property that is that multifamily residential that's just being used for housing right now, renting it out in order to reduce the financial burden. Because what he's been doing is trying to make sure that deterioration of the building doesn't continue, fixing the roof, fixing different leaks in the building to just make sure that whatever potential redevelopment opportunities are available don't get lost because of the building further deteriorating. He's open to different ideas there. He talked about potential idea around, could there be event space there? He has had conversations with different entities in the neighborhood and in the city about what the reuse opportunities are there. It is a huge building and a huge project though. And so our thought here is, could we look at some redevelopment or kind of reuse opportunities for this building that would make sense based on what we've heard from the community, the market opportunities, but also develop kind of a phased approach of how that could be undertaken, because it's probably not going to be able to be done in one go ahead, whether that's looking at the gym space as one component versus the other pieces versus the basement. They all could be undertaken in different phases. And so I think that for the property owner, that could be a good value to kind of see how do you tackle this and what kind of uses would make sense. Any questions on the Armory building? Any thoughts on that?
I just don't know where this landed, so, and I'm glad Jerry's here. Thank you for being here, Jerry. There had been an application put in front of the city of Glens Falls for some feasibility study funding. And I just don't know where that resides now. Jeff, you probably know better than anybody in the room.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's sort of contingent, and we're going to sort of get through this process, or at least address, put it into the process, see if ideas emerge from that. We've had some thoughts about different uses with the possibilities of the building. But, I think to at least want to let a few ideas percolate. And I know there's some concerns or interest, at least in the proximity to the high. So we want to be mindful of that too. But we've had a few conversations. I know they've been sort of stagnant for a while because of this process. But I think it's a property that is I guess about as right as we're gonna get for development, as far as an interest perspective. Right, it does have a lot of unique challenges, architecturally, it's a cool building, but it's also tough one to sort of repurpose. Certainly doesn't lend itself to every use.
Right. Yeah, very unique space, especially the gym side would require a lot of changes. If it was gonna be something other than just a big open gym space or event space. The other portion of the building is kind of more broken into rooms and would be maybe an easier to tackle for a mix of uses on that side of the building. I guess ideas from the committee as we're thinking about, next steps for some of these is starting to come up with these concepts. Ideas that you have for any of these sites, would love to hear as we're having the conversation and moving through the sites too. But
Well, there is a couple of flagships that represent kind of the museum attraction oriented component there. So if you thought about that as a corridor, one of the things I've been thinking about is where are other potential players that may be in either suboptimal space or that we could approach about whether or not their strategic plans would involve potentially relocating if the right opportunity came. I mean, I think, for instance, of Folk Life Center and the library, it's constrained in space and it's not accessible. Now, no one from their board has come and said, hey, this is what I want to do. I would think we would have to kind of engage them to see their appetite for that. The Chapman similarly is limited in terms of its current space. But I'd at least like to give an effort to try to see if they have an interest.
Yeah. I think that aligns really well with some of the things that we've heard too. I know like Children's Museum, we've heard a lot of times about their parking constraints and issues with crossing the street. And interest in expanding as well, and some other ideas around different social service organizations that are they in the right building or could they be moving? And so maybe some outreach as a next step to some of these organizations that are in different buildings right now and just kind of understand appetite and interest. I should have known, we also do have BJH on our team. And so for these projects, for all of them, they will be getting into some of the financial feasibility work of looking at the pro formas of revenue, costs, all of that for these projects. Which hopefully would then help with the future grant applications too.
One other to consider is the historical societies, they're currently kind of out there at the Joseph Warren Homestead, but again, completely landlocked in terms of what they can do. If they wanted to potentially explore having a presence downtown, they'd be a third to engage.
Sorry, could you speak up while you're talking? We can't hear you back here. It's really
Sure,
hard
so-
to hear your comments.
To recap, just some generating ideas regarding the use of the armory on Warren Street. Over the past couple of years, well, let's see, I've known Jerry Nudie for about 6 years, and he's been very open about allowing ideas to percolate and the space to be toured. One idea that was mentioned was the possible relocation of the Children's Museum. The biggest limitation of that organization in the context of these conversations has been parking. So they have no off-street parking for visitors. And they have a couple of spots, that are municipally managed on the street. And then the concept of a home for the Joseph Warren Museum, that's only 2 years removed now from kind of heavy concentration of conversation. Jerry and I met with Jennifer Brink from the Glens Falls Symphony Orchestra. So we have a better understanding of, I know a little bit about visual arts. I don't know anything about performing arts. So Jennifer came in to examine the space, if that would be a robust enough arena for their performances. On the eye test, ironically, the gymnasium area might not be big enough for a full symphony performance, but it could avail itself to smaller performances, diversifying the portfolio of programming. So in short, it could be a multidimensional place for lots and lots and lots of arts and culture. As the CEO of the neighboring art museum, to see some sort of continuity, continuum of arts and culture programming down Warren Street would be great. I think this area calls for that. Am I missing anything there?
No, I think that was a good coverage on it. And just also to note that after this, we will be developing some concept plans and doing further advancing some of these initial ideas. And at the next public workshop where there will be allowing, a bit more interaction than what happens at these committee meetings, we'll have those ideas further fleshed out for input from the public as well.
I don't think we know yet, but is there anything, and Jeff, you probably know this better. Because of its historical nature, is there anything that limits future development? I don't know, and it's actually inquired, somewhere along the line, someone had mentioned to me that the federal nature of armories included you from doing certain things. Other people have told me that's bunk. So I don't know the real answer. There might be some benefits, right, to historic tax credits and things like that, so I don't think there's too many sticks involved, but there may be some carrots.
And typically, anything that involves grant funding would have to be reviewed by the New York State Historic Preservation Office, and because this is a listed on the National Register, there would be more scrutiny. That's really like getting into things like punching new windows on the outside of the building, probably would be a no from SHPO for any project there, and so it's those exterior changes that are typically the most biggest no-nos when it comes to grant funding. So the other building just then past the Hyde on the other side is Native Textiles. This is actually two parcels, one that's on the rear of the property or the block right to the east of the Hyde parcel. And then the next is the one that fronts on Warren Street that we think of when we think of the Native Textiles building. We did again tour this building as well. The Native Textiles building, the one that fronts on Warren Street, the front of it really is largely the former office space that was there. Hasn't really been touched since that vacated about 20 years ago, ish. And the rest of it is they're actively working with Realized Brokers to lease the space. There are some folks that are leasing the space for storage right now, and that includes a little bit in both of the buildings, and the property owners also using a portion of the building for some storage as well. So here it really seems about how do we attract tenants and users of this space to go into the building itself. I don't know if there's anything else we want to talk about with Native Textiles or ideas or the thoughts have. We have noted here, like, what could be the marketing strategy to attract tenants? Parking design, that was noted that there's just a small parking lot in the very front of the building that's on Warren Street and no large dedicated parking area for if the building were to be fully occupied. Probably we should look at parking.
There is a big parking lot down the street.
Yes.
On the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anything else on Native Textiles we want to talk about? So idea here looking at, and I think we probably want to connect with Jerry, the property owner again, also Realized Brokers to talk about kind of how they've been dealing with the outreach to try to attract tenants and see and what are some opportunities there to bring tenants in.
It would also be interesting to talk to D.A. Collins, John Davidson, that we do have a quarry there. They've talked about for years. Sort of offered suggestions and opened up the floor, so to speak, to opportunities to somehow use that quarry. Again, we're talking about one small one and the one that Lehigh has, but it's still, and it's right behind that, and there's a way to sort of, somehow assimilate that into the development property. Seems like there would be some real value.
That's a good reminder that we did talk to DA Collins, and so they're actively interested in putting, and we talked about this at a previous meeting, floating solar there. And it's just looking at what are the federal and state incentives that are needed to make something like that move forward. With that site, and you'll notice it's not in this packet, we didn't include it as a strategic site. It's not like there's a redevelopment opportunity there, and there is this planned idea of what to happen there, but it definitely gets folded into how you think about the neighboring properties. You're gonna say something?
I was just going to reiterate what you said, that we had talked about it, where you covered.
Okay. And yeah, that was a good reminder that not every property owner that we talked to is included here. It's just those that we're still thinking about as strategic sites. Another two, before you continued on Warren to get to Heidelberg, that we did talk to was the owner of the Araxi Cleaner site. So that's owned by the auto parts property owner who is just next door to that. He is interested in expanding his business onto that property. Already has ideas. He hasn't developed plans for them, but wants to put in a one-story auto-related business there. Our take from that conversation is this maybe is not one of those strategic sites to look at alternate reuses and what would be best for there. And it's maybe more about what are the zoning regulations for the site so that anything that's developed there really ensures that it's pedestrian oriented, not kind of all auto oriented with a huge parking lot in the front. So more on the regulatory standpoint than on developing a concept, since he already has an idea of what he'd like to do there. But if there's a disagreement from the group on taking that approach, we can revisit. And then we did also talk to Ruth, who owns the old taxi company building right at the corner of Shermantown Road. She's been actively trying to find a buyer for that property. It's not listed currently, but it's been on and off the market. She has it rented out right now. Here, we pointed her to the EPA funding that the city has, because her biggest hangup in terms of getting the property sold has been not having a phase 1 or phase 2 done and not understanding any sort of environmental contamination on the site. And so that was kind of our recommended next step there, was making sure that she is able to access that and do the due diligence. So then we get to Heidelberg. So we do have a map here. And we talked to Dave. That shows the only, the small portion of the site that is within the city of Glens Falls. If you recall, the town of Queensbury also got a BOA grant that is actually going to be kicking off soon. We'll be working with the town on that. In our conversations with Dave, and feel free to jump in and correct me on any of this, but there's really kind of limited near-term redevelopment opportunities, especially when you get off of Warren Street to the back of the property. There's potentially interesting opportunities when you look at this site holistically with the rest of the Heidelberg parcels to look at some trail connectivity that builds on the feeder canal, whether that's creating some more parking amenities. I know you're in some conversations about that, whether it's creating connections over even across the river as a long-term opportunity there. And so given this, limited opportunities at the moment here for this site, our thought is kind of thinking about how this would fit into a larger trail connectivity discussion with the properties in the town of Queensbury and the properties in Saratoga County, given its location on the feeder canal. I don't know, Dave, if you want to add anything else on that.
No, I think you covered it, but it's a difficult, complicated site. I mean, it's cut up very weirdly. I mean, they've got railroad tracks, you got the feeder canal, which is public access. So it divides, the parcels in half. Where the main plant is, there's several parcels there as well. Also difficult to redevelop. So time will tell.
Any thoughts from the group related to Heidelberg, the city of Glens Falls portion of that site?
Norvell, I think at one point, Dave, Jeff and I and some attorney, we did a tour when you were starting your decommissioning. And the front building up on the hill, the driveway in, the standalone old office building, I think you had some willingness potentially that could be subdivided potentially, or be maybe carved out more easily than deeper into the property if there was a reuse.
Yeah, I think the property that's north of the feeder canal, that's easily developable, in my opinion, except for the large silos that exist there. It'd be very costly to take them down. But that is a historic building. It's been there, I think it was built in the 50s. And the plant has been there 135 years, so there's a lot of old legacy type buildings still existing even along the canal.
Yeah, it would be a really interesting heritage piece.
Yeah.
From, like, he had shown me that building as well, when you toured it. What was in your mind in terms of?
We didn't go
use?
inside it.
Yeah,
It sort of screams museum or
something like that,
visitor center or something.
something of like homage to the
Right.
company that has been there for years. Or to the industry.
It's neat.
Okay.
You have listed here potential trail connections to Moreau.
Yes. In Queensbury.
That would be over the Dragon One Bridge.
But so we are willing to entertain at least conversations about that?
I think Heidelberg Materials would be open to anything at this point, but logistically, how that would be done would be, I mean, it's a conversation with.
There are real conversations
Town Moreau.
with OSI
Yeah.
further down the river. Like I thought they were crazy when they began, but they continued. And the cost of taking a bridge past Spire Falls over the Hudson River is astronomical.
Mhm.
So if this is really something that we're willing to consider, we should engage them. Because it's a far more cost-effective alternative than what they're actively pursuing right now. Now, they're also, that same group is also in conversations with the county over the railway that the county owns in the rest, and there's a clear intention to try to create connectivity on these bikeways that is far more assertive than I remember a couple of years ago. So I don't think this is, like, the only thing is we shouldn't engage them unless we're serious about actually talking to them about it, because when they engage, they have a big constituency that's interested in this and they show up in mass.
Yeah, I'd leave it to you, Dave, in terms of that, but I feel like we were open to it in the conversation that we had. The reason I didn't spend more time on this conversation is that it's in Queensbury, that bridge, and so it kind of falls more within the bounds of the Queensbury BOA that will be undertaken. Here it would be looking at how can you create those connections from the city of Glens Falls to potentially any future bridge connection.
But it's a little tricky, right, because the access road is in Glens Falls, right?
Yes,
Right, so it begins there,
Yeah.
right, you venture back there,
you could,
so.
yeah, you'd have to, or you can access from the bike path into the plant that way.
Okay,
Wow.
down further
Yeah.
past Germantown.
Or build a new road.
I want to make sure that we don't spend too much time on this, but John Strow and I have talked about this at length, and we are their economic development advisor as well. And he's always looking for opportunities to create connectivity, the trail network that Queensbury has. And the connection to the Empire Trail is very, very important to him. Now, he may or may not be the supervisor at the time that we're actually talking about doing this. But it's also a component of at least the proposal that we're looking at Tech Meadows to try to create some connectivity between these trail networks. So there's some alignment here that where this project could connect with other strategic projects in the region. And I do think it represents an opportunity for Queensbury and the city to potentially collaborate in a way that's aligned, because they both have a BOA here. If you're interested at all in having that conversation, we can broker more of it.
The city and the town have been working together on the trail system too. We just had John at our water and sewer commission meeting, and we passed a resolution to expand some of our trails together. So I think this would be a good opportunity to continue that conversation.
Agreed. The bridge has a expiration date in 2028. If it's inactive. We have approval, I think 40 years was the term. So that bridge will be demolished, or supposedly has to be demolished if it's not used. Or by 2028.
What's the level of integrity? What kind of shape is it in?
It's in decent shape. It was constructed by Gabricki built that bridge. It was designed by Rist Frost in 1989. So, 40 years, it's in relatively decent condition and can certainly be repurposed. There is a forced sewer main that crosses the bridge from the town of Monroe. That is there. So I did engage the town of Monroe about that. To make them aware that, we might have to find an alternate route, or maybe they can take over the easement rights to that, to that bridge in the future.
Just what the residents of Monroe were excited to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a very exciting opportunity, especially in our conversation too, of how that could connect to Monroe State Park.
Rose State Park, yeah.
With the plans that they're doing in Monroe to make that connection.
Sure.
And that continues pretty far. So I'm on the Saratoga Plan Board. And I mean, there's a long game of connecting Graphite Mountain Range on Route 9 through Palmertown to Corinth Mountain and then into Morel. And that's a pretty extensive trail network. And it's going to be a major draw for outdoor enthusiasts. It's going to
Definitely.
create a major concentration of activity.
So we do want to pursue some more conversations.
So we will, I think that a lot of the bridge pieces, I'm just trying to. Will fall within Queensbury, but the conversation should be holistic, and because we're working on both of them, we can make sure that that's something that's reflected in both plans and looked at holistically for improvements to the site.
The timeliness of the ticking clock here is a really important piece.
Definitely.
It is, yep.
Is there a way to create a stay of execution on that 40-year?
I'm
Limit?
sure we'd have to engage the DEC and have that discussion with the state of New York.
Just to buy some time?
My guess is that OSI would participate in that if we brought them into the conversation.
I would imagine, yeah.
I mean, Dave, if you feel comfortable in that, and I think we haven't kicked off the Queensberry BOA, but I could engage with John Strow and Stu and the planning department there. And see if we could maybe, if they're supportive, have that, some of those initial conversations.
Yeah, I think it's worth the discussion. I mean, the company is looking for options for the property. Including the complete sale of the property as well, so that's, you know, that's a potential possibility too.
Okay.
That they may dispose of the property soon.
Right.
So that's a concern.
Okay. Well, okay, the next site we have in here is the Finch Warehouse, which was the subject of, if you weren't at the workshop, the high school students presentation. Which everyone loved, it was very sweet. This, we did talk to Finch, and this is just used for storage right now. They have no need to keep this property other than wanting to find a place for the materials that are stored there currently to be relocated to. Obviously, this was before the announcement on Friday about the stopping of the pulp processing that's happening. And so I think that kind of changes their general use of all of their property. And so we have not re-engaged with them since that initial conversation.
Well, I can share some.
Okay,
There is no intention right now of them disposing of or consolidating property. So whatever they told you before is probably still in play. I think what they're looking to do, they have to figure out how to store more purchased pulp on site, which will probably go on that lot, but I don't see their storage requirements as having grown since Friday. I think their objective in all their conversations with us is to figure out how to mitigate any impact from this strategic change for their business. It's not to create new ones.
right.
So until they tell you otherwise, I would assume that you're still okay here in terms of their intent on that property.
And one of the things we thought about when they mentioned that they just need a place to store things, we just come from visiting Native Textiles where there's abundant storage and they're looking for tenants to use that storage space. And so I think that there's some conversations that we could have about, you know, what are some opportunities to fill buildings that are very much warehouse structures and open up some of these buildings for other opportunities as well. Do folks have ideas around this building? I know that the students presented an idea, but it is such a unique building.
Yes.
First thing that jumps out to me in the comparison would be in Tampa. It's a building called Armature Works. It's kind of in the heart of the city of Tampa, right on the harbor. And it was a decommissioned, like, medium manufacturing facility. That's now a food hall, event space, performing arts space, rooftop bar. I was there for a memorial service a couple years ago, and the facility is just fascinating. It's so great. It draws people from all over the region for many, many different reasons, all under one roof. You know, it's just, it's
What was the name of it?
Armature Works. So you picture a facility like the Finch Warehouse on Maple, and you open up what used to be those delivery bays as easy open air access, and then inside is sort of a like varietal food court. And then on one barbell, this big building is about 1,000-person capacity event space. Like 30-foot high ceilings, very industrial and open, so it's pretty versatile for its use. And then there's a rooftop bar with views. It's a very cool space, and to have that as an anchor on the first ward with all the things that could be orbiting it would be pretty impressive.
Well, a less community oriented, but demanded property use is sub 5,000 square foot warehouse space for tradesmen. And the fact that these already have loading docks makes it amenable to them. We see these developers more than once in a while. And there's active development going on in other parts of the county right now to build exactly what this represents. I don't know whether that's a an interim use or what, like, what it would take to change the facility so it could be code compliant to do that. But the single most requested thing we have is for somebody to find sub 5,000 square foot warehouse space that they can do trade activity, store equipment, and represent their business with one address. So there's demand for that.
That's interesting. We can, yeah, like I mentioned, we're gonna go back to BJH with a lot of the ideas that come up with today, and if there's some follow-up on the market side of things, we maybe will reach out to get some more information too on those conversations that you've been having.
I've never,
Wonder if there'd be some workforce development or training, programs that could coincide with the warehousing space and coordinating with BOCES or local trade schools. I mean, I think it'd be great for the high school students to have an opportunity to be able to have something so close instead of getting bused to Wilton.
I don't want to speak for them, but they like the idea of everyone being bused to Wilton.
I have heard.
Yeah. We did look at, in conjunction with Liza, developing a water treatment oriented program that was novel to the place. And we actually built 5 water spots at the pipe fitters union building on the other side of Glens Falls. So there is precedent for that, but I don't know that I have 10 of those. I only know of 1 of those.
from a youth development perspective, and I've never been inside this building and I don't know the square footage either, but a popular model is a multi-destination athletic complex that captures a bunch of different profit centers. So for example, my almost 16-year-old was a competitive ninja. So we traveled all over the country. So if you've seen American Ninja Warrior on TV, this is what Olivia was doing. We traveled a lot. There's a facility in Princeton, New Jersey that has indoor lacrosse, indoor soccer, a full outfitted competitive ninja course, a bar and restaurant. So you're there for about 10 hours, you don't leave. You eat, you have a beer, you participate, your younger kids have like remember tree pad, that indoor play space? So like a big obstacle course, all of it lives in one building and it captures all of your money and attention for the day.
Yeah, it's only about the long part of the building's about 11,000 square foot, as I remember. And,
It's
you know,
pretty
you've
narrow.
got that little office up there, which is probably another few thousand square feet, so it's not huge.
And it may not have the competitive square footage, but if you look at what, like Wilton Mall, for example. I went into Wilton Mall for the first time in a long time. It's now much more activity than it is retail, right? It's gymnastics studio, a karate dojo, an indoor batting cage. So the repurpose there is really interesting and something
Yeah.
of consideration.
I mean, we did hear a lot in the survey responses that a need for more youth activities too, so it's a good point to bring up.
I do wonder about competition with Aframs being so close to the
Mhm.
dome up there. At least for soccer and baseball, because they have a lot of those activities up there, but I think any other kind of winter indoor recreation opportunity would be great. I also wonder on the social services side of things, if we're talking about kind of housing a lot of the multiple different social service entities that already exist in the East End under one roof. It'd be a great building to do it. It's in a good location. It has good access. I think with some streetscape improvements, it could look really nice on the outside as well. I just think it'd be an interesting way to make sure that people are getting what they need and it's also efficient for everybody involved.
There's coming back to the Armory for a moment, there's an idea that's been floated around and Carl DeBrule is here. He's the vice chair of the Hyde Board. And a concerned citizen. I ran this idea by him recently and not to get too far afield with dreaming about what the Armory could become, but I think there's an opportunity for coexistence. Where the lower level of the Armory could be sort of one-stop shopping for social services. So this heavy concentration of the things that everyone needs. And then at the street level, being performing arts, because the timing of those businesses are sort of handing off to each other pretty neatly. If you have a business day operation of social services that winds down between 4 and 5 p.m. You know, I don't want to oversimplify this, but then you have an orchestra tuning instruments and warming up between 5 and 6, and the performance going live at 7. I mean, the clockwork seems to make sense to a certain degree, and then freeing up
maybe 15 or 20 affordable housing units that are currently being occupied by small nonprofits and social service. So it sort of plays into a very important idea that Carl, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm glad you're here, is talking about, which is improving workplace affordable rate housing and helping in some ways to help reestablish middle class in Glens Falls. And we talk about the dichotomy in the first ward of the most expensive place to rent and the most affordable place to buy. You know, maybe there's some leveling that can occur there. It's living in kind of three different pots, but where you have ease of access to get all the services that you're now dotting all around the city to participate in one place.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a building that we need to get inside to understand opportunities. So we, like I mentioned, some of them we were able to get inside with the property owners and bring our architectural staff there with us and understand kind of what reasonably is, you know, could be rehabbed in some way and what can't. So we'll bring them there and can talk to you about different ideas around access with these different types of uses.
So I just wanted to real quick about the social services, since we're directly across from the Armory and the Hive. And there is a family services in Poughkeepsie, New York, that took over the old Poughkeepsie High School many years ago. We've toured it a few times and they call it the Ship. And it is very similar to what you're talking about. There are challenges, of course, with it, but the positive part is not just having a lot of the social service, like our agency, Family Service Association, which does do a lot of different services than, say, Community Action. I don't think Open Door would probably be appropriate. Ascend already has Cooper Street. So some would work, some wouldn't. But what they also did was brought in essential businesses such as banks and pharmacies to also be included, so that it was sort of a one-stop type of shop. It's something to kind of consider. I think the biggest challenge, and right now it's probably the foremost of a lot of the agency's minds, is food insecurity and the food pantries. There's a lot of changes going on. We all are seeing a huge uptick in numbers of not just the very low income and poverty, but what would you call ALICE, the asset limited income constrained employed. They're employed people, but they're having a hard time affording food till the end of the month, and that takes up a great deal of space. So those are just a few
That's great feedback, yeah.
pros and cons of that.
So lots of different ideas on the Finch Warehouse building that we can look at with our architectural team and with DJH from a feasibility standpoint, and come back with some ideas when we meet next. Grist Mill, so this is the next building that we did get to go inside, including, as I was telling Chuck earlier, up to the party palace on the top floor. Very cool building. He is using the first floor for storage for his electrical business, and the rest of the building is vacant. The big constraint is there's the giant hole that goes through all the floors that's like 30 foot by 30 foot. So they need to be able to fill the floors to make sure that they could be a continuous floor, and so it's a little safer also. He though is interested in putting in maybe a couple of one or two commercial tenants on the first floor, and on the upper floors having that be residential. His thoughts is kind of maybe not a ton of units, a couple of larger units that would be in there, and that's largely, I think, from like a management standpoint of not wanting to have as many units to manage. The site though does, and you can see this on the tax parcel map, include the barn next door that he has some storage in, and then also undeveloped portion too, that he's interested in some infill development there. He is open to kind of relocating where he's storing his electrical supplies. So again, a lot of opportunity there. We did have our architects with us for this tour, and so they could kind of further advance the concepts, because he doesn't have the concepts beyond just an idea in his head of what he'd like to do, and develop some cost estimates for that as well.
Is it powered?
Remember?
It was not when I looked at it.
There were lights for the first floor,
Electric,
right?
I think, that.
Power, in the whole building.
Come on,
Yeah. Nobody sees them.
Yeah, it was hot.
It was hot. Yeah.
Surely like fishing that hour.
Right. We considered this as the very first set of shuts 12 years ago. I did engineering drawings on how we would somehow stick that machine in there, which was the craziest thing I've ever done professionally.
It's a very cool
It's a
building.
very fascinating site.
You have to say, you know, that building has some of the best views of both the Berkshires and the Adirondacks, on both sides. It's unbelievable view.
We haven't been on top of the cement side, but we.
Well,
So is the group okay with us kind of taking that idea of advancing some of these initial ideas for reuse of the building, consistent with the vision that the property owner has? Yeah, okay, I think that's great. Post-Star building, we also talked to that new property owner, and you can see on the map that we actually expanded that from just the Post-Star building to the parking lot across the street, which he also owns. He is actively advancing adaptive reuse project of the large building that's in the front, but he has no plans for the rear of the property that fronts on the Warren County Bikeway. He was interested in some infill housing development potential that would be along the bikeway, which I think would be very appealing. Especially because there is quite a bit of space on the property for parking, and with the parcel across the street also for parking, could be a nice combination. I know there's also the residential that's just on the other side of that, of the bikeway as well. And yeah, so here, if the group's okay with it, we could come up with some concepts of what that might look like.
The size of the site provides significant opportunity.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of, it is at that critical point where it's pretty much all residential to the north on that block. And then to the south, it's more the mixed use, and so it's an important transition zone.
I actually had some conversations with the people, the Red Oaks, the bike owners, about having some sort of bike park of some kind, because they're right nearby and of course it's on the.
Oh, yeah.
Where,
What were their thoughts on that?
let's do it.
Okay. The last property that owner that we talked to is the owner of the Dollar Store Plaza, the former Price Chopper. Family Dollar has a lease on half of the building that extends until, I forget the year, 23rd. At least 36, something around 38, yeah, around there. And
Long time.
they have terms in their lease related to what use can go in the other half of the building, so kind of not non-compete, so no other similar types of businesses that can go there. That being said, he was open to not just getting a tenant into this building, but looking at other redevelopment opportunities on the site. And thought that Family Dollar would be open to ideas of, you know, temporary relocating in order to then come into a building that maybe was like a mixed use structure here. They've owned a lot of other former Price Shoppers in the area, and some of those are seeing development. I mentioned the one in Lansingburg right now. That's moving forward with redevelopment. So here, I mean, just the fronting of this property where it kind of is not facing the street. It's not really kind of, I don't know. I was excited about the idea of looking at a new build on this site, but I wanted to see. Thoughts?
It's a lot of space and it's not currently serving anybody right now.
They've been, I would say that one thing he did note was Family Dollar has been really happy in the location, and they get a ton of business, and it is a huge asset for the community, especially because there's not places to, you know, to get groceries and things like that in the East End. So making sure that there is a place for food access continually in the East End, I think needs to be a part of any sort of reuse here. Yeah. And then the only sorry.
One last thing, is this so far from the Post-Star property that you couldn't imagine doing something that was coordinated between the two sites? I mean, one of the things that strikes me is.
It's a long way.
Yeah, but an entry level home oriented development. I don't, like, each of those sites could host a handful of those. But the developers need a certain amount in order for them to be able to pencil the project out.
Right.
So the idea might be that you had one pocket here and one pocket there. I don't know those numbers, but I know that one of these sites probably isn't big enough to even discuss it, but maybe between the two it
Yeah,
is.
that's a good point. Yeah, we can talk about that too in terms of the financial feasibility, if it makes sense to kind of think of these holistically, because the Family Dollar, I would say he was more open to selling the property too. So,
We're talking about homes that would be certainly less than 1,800 square feet, usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. Really small footprint, would require a whole zoning, discussion with the
Right.
city, but those kind of communities have gotten a lot of traction with the state right now.
Right.
And the housing dollars will probably not be available indefinitely, but they're probably as generous as they've ever been.
Yeah. yeah, so why don't we look at that in terms of exploring kind of what could happen on either site, and if from a financial standpoint, we need to think about them more holistically for redevelopment on Cooper Street. And getting some housing. The only property owner that we did not talk to is the person who owns those 2 vacant sites that are next to Open Door and across from Native Textile. We tried really hard, never heard back, reached out to the realtor as well, that when it was previously listed. Our take is we have a lot of sites, and I think amongst all of them, that site's probably not the most important to come up with a reuse concept for, and so we're okay with moving forward without further trying to contact them, but I don't know the thoughts of the group. Agree or not.
How big is that?
It's 2 parcels.
Yeah, it's not huge. I mean, I think. I have an inkling it's gonna sell before anything else happens there. I mean, it's connected to water sewer. It's completely vacant. It's build ready. I would guess that someone's gonna put something there. I think it's a little over an acre. It's not very big.
We have enough willing landowners participating, I don't think we need to force it.
I mean, one thing you could do is maybe just some generic model of the streetscape on vacant parcels like that. They may not be strategic sites in your report. But, what could go there ideally that fills in, that blends in
Yeah.
the surrounding streetscape, so that there's an idea out there for
Right.
somebody at least.
That was a very good transition, Jim, to the next topic about supporting recommendations. So I don't know if anyone had other thoughts on these sites before we shift to that.
Now that we're talking about the armory, there is a project I worked on in the city of Albany. I believe it was a school, it might have been an industrial use, called the Albany Barn. And it's the performance space. It also has living spaces for the artists.
It's super.
It's a really cool program, and that might be it's a big performance space they have, so something like that could.
There's one Schenectady as well, Electric City Barn,
Mhm.
similar model, it's really cool.
I'll check those out.
I think it's run by the same people. It is.
Sounds like a company.
Good name. Yeah. Okay, so like I mentioned before, beyond the sites, we will be looking at some concepts for reuse, but we've heard from the public, talked about our past meetings, this planning process is not just about site reuse concepts, but it's about kind of broader revitalization in the East End. So just kind of to hit a little bit on some of the things that we've heard as recurring themes and our kind of thoughts on next steps related to them. We've heard a lot about streetscape, so there was your good transition, Jim. Parking has come up a ton, trail connections has also come up a ton, so in terms of public realm improvements, what we'd be looking at is kind of developing an overall master plan for this area with those streetscape improvements, looking at some of those enhanced trail connections, looking at kind of Eastfield. There was the plan that was presented at the last workshop, got some helpful feedback from the public, folding some of that feedback into kind of the vision for Eastfield. So some public realm improvements, I'd say, was one general bucket that we've been hearing. And then the other general bucket, and I'll pass it over to Allison to talk a little bit more about this, is public health and quality of life. Heard a lot about smells. We've heard a lot about the recycling center. We've heard about, code compliance, code issues. And so that's definitely going to be a big piece of the plan in terms of recommendations to address what's been heard.
So, cool, exciting project. We've been approached by Habitat for Humanity. The director Sharon is here tonight. Is something called Rock the Block. It's a program they do across the country. basically you select a site in a community, and there's a week-long process of volunteers working with homeowners to do minor, generally exterior home improvements. So it collaborated with Jim Thatcher, who runs our community development block grant program, to kind of see what sort of programs would best fit in the East End. We have a small area that we've identified that we're going to target for this. It's the mostly residential section, kind of between Warren and Maple Street. Mainly because it's eligible for some of that CDBG funding that we get through the city, but I've handed this around. I'll let Sharon talk a little bit more, but we've scheduled it for September 28th to October 2nd. That's when, so those volunteers will be out there working with homeowners. We're gonna have some rollaway dumpsters for the general neighborhoods to, do some cleanup. We have the city separately has a tree planting program when this is an eligible neighborhood, so we can also do some street trees and some gardening, things like that. But I'll hand it over to Sharon here to talk about kind of how we're gonna do eligibility and outreach, or do you want? Okay. Okay.
I think probably questions I can handle. Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Horton. I'm the executive director for Habitat in Saratoga, Warren, and Washington County. And we're excited to collaborate with the city to bring Rock the Block to the East End. It is community revitalization, boots on the ground, many volunteers, many hands coming into the community to help clean up, freshen up. We also will have a side program, which Habitat normally does. I don't know if everybody knows what Habitat does, but we build single family or multi-family housing, affordable housing or workforce housing, as some would term it. And repair is something that has been a great demand lately, that we've heard a lot of calling about and concern. So Rock the Block gives us this opportunity to do a small repair program and launch a bigger repair program to our chapter. And so along with the community revitalization, beautification, and cleanup, we'll go a section of what we do will be home repair for applicants in the 50 to 80% AMI income qualified range. And similar to what we do on the normal builds. So questions, happy to answer.
I do want to add, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be starting mailers to the general vicinity with the property owners. There'll be an opportunity for people to kind of give us an idea of what they'd like to see. And if it doesn't really fall into the eligibility of the Rock the Block program, we do have some other resources at the city and with Habitat for Humanity that might open up opportunities to work with individual homeowners that might need more assistance. So this is there'll be mailers coming out in the next couple of weeks for that area. But the map that's handing around, the blue line kind of shows the area we're targeting now. That's not to say we do have to keep it kind of in that general area, but there might be opportunities to work with homeowners. It's kind of on the outskirts too.
And we are obviously we'd love help and support. So if you've got time or recommendations for those who might want to join us on a planning committee to get this launched off the ground and executed. Rock the Block will end on Friday, celebrating with a block party. We want to identify a place to do that. So if anybody has any ideas about where we could, land at the end of the week to do this celebration, food, entertainment, kids activities, bringing the community together to celebrate, the work that we've done all week together. So feedback, thoughts, or suggestions, anything at all is helpful.
We also are anticipating that Nora, Bell, and Megan will have some preliminary recommendations to have available during that block party, so we can end up another opportunity to engage with the community.
So what was the time?
So September 28th to the 1st, we will be doing the cleanup, and then the 2nd, we will celebrate with a lot on October 2nd.
And that's how you get involved.
Well, we have a database, but we do e-blast, social media, things like this, you know, just, community sharing and recruitment. You know, we'll need probably about 100 volunteers for this project. Yes, please. Oh, yeah, kids, it's something, you know, get the school involved, kids are great. They're nice and strong, you know, and willing to do, the dirty work, so we're happy to have anybody, teams, sports teams. Allison and Jim and I have been like brainstorming about like who's in the area, could we get, you know, some of the, you know, amateur sports, you know, people here to.
Yep, that's the guy. That's it.
Oh, is that what?
Bring in the green jacket.
Great, awesome.
We did it years ago in Hudson Falls where they had, they built the Ark in the Park down there with a big playground and the kids. And a bunch of us took 2 weeks off to go down there and we basically, because I have a lot of contractors and plumbers, electricians, things like that, that all do it, police officers, so
Awesome,
they volunteer, the family love it, it's just good interaction with them,
Yeah.
so.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna ask, sending it right now to
Thank
my
you.
event coordinator.
Just another thought, I work for a company that does something called community teamwork, employees get a day off. It has to be a project initiated by an employee, anyway, it might be too late for this year, but I'll.
No, not at all too late, bring them
Well,
on.
for us, yeah,
Oh,
we have to
okay,
be by a certain date, so I'll look into that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'd like to say the perfect spot to have that party would be the Eastfield Pavilion, where you could walk north from Haskell all the way down to Deer Street. Walk it right off.
What is it called now?
What's walkable?
Eastfield.
At Eastfield Pavilion on Catherine Street. And there's a new fence in there. They are operating that area. It would be extremely easy to block off for the full 24 hours or whatever you get there, but in there. And there's plenty of parking around it, so he said if you blocked it off from Haskell, Catherine is only two blocks long. You block it off at Haskell at the end, leave Catherine open, and everything in between stays. Nobody gets in there unless it's an emergency vehicle. Okay, there's plenty of places to park, flat all the way around that area. There's no problem with parking. The only people that would use that road that day would be emergency vehicles. And of course, local people who live there, you know, with the houses. But that's it. Okay, are you familiar with where that is?
I am, why we done.
Okay, that would be a perfect spot, and everyone, and East End Rising wants to highlight the part that they're gonna be doing over, what a perfect spot to do.
Yeah.
And everybody can just about walk to it. We would get hundreds and hundreds of people that would be able to walk to that and not have to worry about cars. If there were parking, they could park on the blacktop at Eastfield and walk.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Right.
And I could get a lot of volunteers for you to work on. Okay.
So much.
Yeah, so we're really excited about this event and how it aligns too with this and that we're able to use it as another opportunity to not just wait till the end of this process to start implementing what we've been hearing, but start moving like as the planning process is still going ahead with some of, you know, addressing these concerns and these issues that have been raised. So we're excited.
I do want to address also the code compliance issues that have come up. As the mayor has spoken, we're reorganizing our codes department, but we still have a department that can respond to your issues. So on the city website, there is a place to report these issues if you'd like someone to come and investigate, see if there's anything we can do from a city's perspective to assist you.
So, in terms of the next steps, what we're going to be doing is taking these initial ideas that we've been talking about and start building them out further to present to this committee and then presented to the public. That would include developing that overall master plan, some ideas for some of these key sites that we talked about, also supporting recommendations related to streetscape, trails and connections, parking, public health, quality of life, things that would inform zoning, because I know that the city's applying for funding to update zoning. So we want to make sure kind of these more targeted conversations we're having around the East End can get folded into those zoning updates. Then the goal would be to reconvene with this group in mid-September. So we'd at least have a chance to review everything with you all ahead of that October 2nd block party. And then we'd have all the materials at the block party for the public to give more, feedback and a closer review of everything. So that would kind of be the next step timing. Any questions about that in terms of next steps? Should we decide on a date and time that works for the group? We have a good attendance tonight before we then have any last comments and open up to the public. So let's see, October 2nd. We want to look maybe at the week of September 21st. More on the front end of that week, the 21st, 22nd. Or 23rd. So be,
Second, 23rd.
Third, this is. Think by festival thing will happen downtown, so I don't wanna.
Okay.
Conflict with that, and collaborative's been working on that.
There's a council on the 22nd.
Okay. First.
21st is.
There's zoning board at 6:30, but I mean.
We can do
if
5 to
if we can
6:30.
do 5 to 6, that's fine.
yeah, would that be okay, 5 to 6:30? Or do you want to meet at 4:30? Would that be
First.
the 21st? Yeah.
I'm out, I'm just one person. I have a board meeting at 4.
Thursday is the balloon festival.
Do 21st.
The 21st at 5 p.m. Does that, or do we want to do any earlier? 5 p.m. on the 21st. We will get that information on the project website. We'll circulate press release. If you're on the email list or if you just got added, we'll send out a reminder about that as well. We will, I think, stick with this approach that we took today of making sure that we have the OWL and are streaming the meeting on YouTube for anyone that's not able to attend in person. Any items from the group before we open it up to public comment?
That gonna be at the high.
I think would likely be here for the committee meeting, but we're thinking the Hyde maybe for some of the larger workshop events. Anything from the committee? No? Okay, so open up to public comment. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jim Flint. My wife Barb and I are relatively new residents of the East End, and we were drawn here in part because of East End Rising. So we live on Locust Street, really excited because it's in the neighborhood to help our neighbors. It's gonna be great. Excited about the work that they're getting, and want to thank everybody. When I Googled East End Rising, I got to the city website, but it took a little bit of convolution to get to the portal. So I think if that link to the portal could be right prominently on the city website, that'd be a big help, because the documents are great. I read the summary of the presentation at Rock Hill, really well done. And I think more people could read these documents, that would help. I was over at Eastfield this afternoon. I'm the coordinator for the community garden there. And the garden is thriving. And I want to talk a little bit about just food insecurity because it's mentioned today. And the gardeners want to stay right in that spot. And we'd like to work with Warren County Soil and Water District to expand community gardening on that site. So I know there's, another plan in place, but the East End, I found out in the last week, is part of the, is an economically disadvantaged zone, and is eligible for grant funding, and one of those grants is for community gardens. So we'd really like to have a fence around that site. Moving to the woods is not so great because the deer have already found out about us. They live in the woods and they come over and raid the garden. So if we could get a fence around the garden, expand that site, take a look. The gardens are just beautiful. They're doing it really well. And the last thing, I want to thank Mayor Palmer for making an introduction call to our friends, our neighbors at Finch, and opening up dialogue. I had the opportunity to tour the plant, meet with the economic health officer, who's been there for a number of years, Sandy LeBaron, and with Ray, the plant manager. And since that meeting, the smells that we had been experiencing this spring, which I thought were coming from the stacks, but were coming from the waste treatment plant, that's much improved. And that's made a full uplift to the entire east end. To be able to go out in your backyard and breathe reasonably clean air. Could it be improved some more? Yes, and I'm actually kind of excited about the new plans at Finch. Because that will also help another issue that we've had, which is noise. I think. I'm hoping that, you know, that noise reduction, maybe with the new changes, could help. And I realize that, you know, perhaps, you know, the plan is making these changes because of different reasons, but I really hope it's to the positive benefit of everybody in our neighborhoods. And that as we look to the future, we can all breathe clean air. The kids can grow up and breathe healthy air and just have this great place to live, which you are all helping to do. So thank you.
Any other? Yeah.
I have a few things to say. So the first thing I'll let you know, I said this, but hey, everybody, my name's Matt. I live on Keenan Street on the east end, and I've said this previous meeting, but I'll just reiterate, you know, a lot of great conversation around the sites, and which is the focus of this project, which is great. But you know, I'd love to see more like real bike infrastructure to help meet, you know, we're talking about parking, and if we create more, you know, interest in the area, like we need more parking maybe, right? But Glens Falls is a place that's really, you know, relatively easy to bike and walk. We've already got a lot of great assets as far as like the bike trail, the canal trail for doing those activities. And it, you know, brings people to the area through like Glens Falls and Forever and Falls, etc. But you know, despite that, you know, it can feel sometimes unsafe to bike or walk around even in the neighborhood. Like people drive pretty quickly on some of the streets. Some of the streets that we have old, wide streets that were suited for the commercial area at the time to get industrial goods through, right? So some of the streets I think could be, you know, traffic calming measures would be really, really nice to see real bike infrastructure. Recently, I live on the corner of Keenan and Maple, and they added, you know, white paint on the road for the bikes, which is awesome, but it really honestly doesn't do much to slow down traffic. I see a lot of kids on the street, and in our neighborhood, we all know there's no buses in Glens Falls, so what our kids doing is biking or walking to school, which is awesome. I love to see that, but I would love them to feel more safe doing that. I guess I've talked to many kids, so I don't know if they feel safe or not, but I worry about them, and then, you know, just it would take some of that pressure away from parking to get people to come to like the shirt factory and all these places we're hoping to develop. That'd be really great. I'd also love to see, I think someone mentioned, I didn't know about this, but the potential for like a grocery store in the neighborhood would be really, really great. I'd love to see personally, this is personally selfish, but Trader Joe's would be amazing. It's a smaller footprint for a grocery store and is like unique in that, you know, we don't have one in pretty wide, you know, down, I think Pleasant Park might have been the closest one, I don't know, maybe Albany. So I think it would like bring people into the area, especially from like Saratoga, who want to see some of those, like, you know, go to a store like that. So would really pull the great money in the area and just like easy to walk and get groceries, things like that. And then thirdly, I didn't hear any conversation about, maybe this is outside of the scope of the project, but there's those two vacant lots, there might just be one big one between Christopher Brothers, HVAC, and then obviously Open Door Mission, or maybe church or something on the other side. But those are just like really prominent, frankly ugly properties, and I didn't get to talk about tonight, but I'm wondering if there's any conversation on that.
On that one, the reason why they're not included is because there's a planned project for redevelopment there that's going to bring mixed use development with housing.
Awesome, that's great. Well, thanks.
Getting back to it's been brought up a couple times, I'm sort of confused. I had a question about the empty lot that's been there forever. Right on the corner, the big lot, right on the corner of Warren and Platt, right across from your entrance. That big lot. I've lived here 23 years, and I don't know why it hasn't been bought or developed yet. Well, the lot right off your doorway across the street, you know, does anybody know anything?
So that was the one that we tried to contact that we weren't successful in connecting with. That we tried the property owner, we tried the realtor that it was previously listed with, and we haven't been able to connect with them.
Yeah.
So that was the one unsuccessful.
But that's a mystery because that's been there for 15, 20 years like that. It's mowed, it's kept up. But why aren't we delving into that, why aren't you that would be an ideal spot for an apartment complex or a small housing unit right there. And I'm sure whoever owns it would love to make the bucks on it. That would be the place to develop something like that.
I'd be happy to reach out and see if they wanna sell some habitat.
There you go. Yeah, I know that when it was listed maybe 5, 6 years ago, it was with some plans for, I think it was 1 or 2 homes to go there. My understanding was it was a fire historically that had, is why it's vacant today. So I don't know where things stand now, but
I'm
yeah.
happy to like research it.
Yeah, I can share the emails and the calls and if you can contact them, please be
You
my guest.
never know, like, you know,
Yeah.
a city calls you or a charity calls you, and they
Somebody's maintaining it. That might be the way to find it.
Just lurk
Gotta
there.
get on the mailing schedule.
We'll just hang out at Native Textiles all day and look out the window and wait.
Any other comments from the public?
And I just have one last question. So everything that was outlined, for your agenda, for all of your sites that you plan on working on over the next few years, and of course have been working on. That's it, correct? There's nothing else outside of what we discussed tonight that you are responsible for working on and trying to develop. I asked that question. Anywhere else in the East End?
So we'll be focusing reuse plans on strategic sites, but then beyond that, the plan will have recommendations for improvements to streetscape, improvements to bike infrastructure, code things, but site specific. Those are the only sites that we'll be.
This is your program and your agenda right now.
But I think, but your question does raise this larger issue, which is sometimes it's hard to keep up with other projects that are outside of scope of this, but are going on in parallel. Like the development that you just mentioned on Warren Street. I think also there continues to be discussion about East Park. And so I think somewhere we should have a clearinghouse that shows how this fits in along with those things. Just for clarity of everyone to keep track of what we're doing versus others.
All right, you mentioned East Park, so I'm confused. You mean Eastfield Park?
Sorry, yeah, East-
What are you referring to?
I'm just saying that there's ongoing conversations about improving East Field, but they're not in this scope.
Right, that's. I alluded to the building and all. Already they put a new fence up and all over there, and it's cleaned up and, you know, but you're talking about Eastfield property only. Sprucing it up, fixing it up, the stadium, the pavilion, that property only,
Then we're
correct?
looking at general public realm improvements as well. So whether that's trail improvements, streetscape improvements, park improvements, that plaza we talked about before.
But
It's
you're
all-
not, right, you're just dealing with the Eastfield property, correct?
We're not dealing with the
Well,
Eastfield.
This committee is not part of the Saron subdivision proposal,
Well,
but
I
that's
am.
what you're speaking of.
So
Yeah.
that's what
They're
I'm
not,
trying to.
I know,
that's
they're
what
not
I'm
part
trying-
of this. That is a
There's
private
the
developer.
question.
Yeah.
Are you guys involved
No,
with
no,
this very, very difficult thing that's going to try to happen? That's all I want to know.
No, ma'am, that's
And
part,
that's
that's
why
a
they're-
private, that's a private developer that's proposing that.
Thank
That
you
is
so
not part
much.
of this
That's
committee.
outside of your scope.
Yes.
Just be careful because there's a lot of people that want to ride on your shoestrings now that are trying to come in here and make it sound hunky dory. End of story. Thank
You sound suspicious.
you. Pardon me?
You sound suspicious. There's a lot of integrity up here. We're okay.
Good.
We're okay.
And I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So are a lot of the people that are here, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's why we're here.
Did Hank have his hand up?
Anyone else have a comment? No? Okay, so again, we'll promote the next workshop, which will be on October 2nd. And with the block party and share when the location's finalized, we'll have materials there. Hope though that you can attend the next committee meeting, which is on Monday, September 21st at 5 p.m. But we'll also promote that in advance as well. So thanks everyone for your time tonight and appreciate it.
Well done. You ever seen the? It's already not. It's good. Yeah.